Hey, and welcome back to the ShoeBox Show. This is Keegan Van Hook, host, and it's just a guy, But I'm here with Tripp White, my good friend. We work together down at the Digital Media Center.
Yes, sir.
He's also a creator of things, video, audio, photo.
Yeah, photo, video. My Instagram is Tripp the Photo Guy.
Okay.
So that's kind of that. But I've been working on some video, shooting some hip hop concerts and some EDM house shows.
Wicked.
In the Talent, Grants Pass area. So that's been kind of my main focal point in that area. And then I've also been shooting a podcast as well with some of the same cats.
Right on. What's the podcast called?
It's called AM Ohm.
AMO?
Ohm.
AM
like
Ohm.
Ohm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And, our last episode was episode 8. We've been doing that for 8 episodes now, and that was with Jaya Rays, who actually he's got a little album release show tonight, Friday, in the Phoenix Clubhouse.
Right on.
At 8 o'clock. He goes on at about 11. But
Sick.
it's free. I don't know if it's free or not, but it is open to all ages, so there's no age restriction, and it'll just be a dope show.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, today I had a bit of an interesting experience to start it off. Last night,
Yeah.
I was randomly called by the, what do you call that? The art department people.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they were like, hey, we need an art model for tomorrow, and you're on our list. And I was like, oh, really?
Oh,
I'm
no
on your
way.
list? Because I had signed up to be an art model months ago.
And so what is that? Like you just...
It's like the classic you get naked and people draw you situation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's what I did very early this morning. Woke up, got out there, and
That is a really interesting experience.
stood in the buff. Yeah, I've done it one other time before. So it was just like still kind of new, kind of wacky.
Yeah.
I kept sitting there getting struck over and over again with just like how odd of a experience it is to someone who hasn't, made that their normal thing.
Yeah.
But I was doing it with this one other guy who is very clearly like another kind of hippie, hot springs going, like nudist guy. And he had been doing it a lot. And he was very comfortable.
Yeah.
He was just walking around. And eventually I got into sort of the vibe of it with
Cool.
that.
Cool.
Just being like, oh, it's all chill.
Yeah.
And I did it once before. It was the same situation. But,
Okay.
yeah.
I was in the art class, my first term at SOU, and I think one of our final projects was having a nude performer come in, and we just were drawing their shape, and this guy, he was bold and really confident. He was doing handstands, full spread eagle, like split legs, like he was going all out for it.
Jeez.
And so much props to you for going out there. I'm sure that takes a lot of confidence,
Yeah.
and especially early, man. Did they at least let you have your coffee or something?
Yeah, it was very chill. Like,
Okay.
yeah, there wasn't any rush to it at all. I mean, I was sitting there holding the same pose 25 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And she like warned me when I struck the pose. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna I know it's gonna be long, so I'm just gonna do something simple. I'm gonna sit here with my legs crossed. She was like, hey, you might not want to have your legs crossed. And I just was like, I'm fine. And she was like, okay, moved on. And like, she was completely correct. Because I can still like feel my leg is not quite all the way there.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it fell asleep in the most complete way possible.
Full prickles.
Full prickles, but then also just gone. Like I couldn't move it anymore.
Wow.
Even like, because at first the feeling just disappears and you're like, all right, no more feeling in my leg. But then it's like you literally can't move it anymore. You don't have the limb at all. It was really weird, and yeah, my brain was trying to make sense of what was actually going on with like my lack of leg and yada yada.
What was like one of the hardest poses you tried doing? Because 25 minutes is a pretty substantial amount.
It would have to be the sitting there with my legs crossed, ironically, even though I did so many other like wild things with the shorter poses. Because the way they start you out is like they want to warm up all the artists, and so you do like poses 2 minutes at a time.
Yeah, that's how we did it as well.
Right. And so we did like, I don't know, like 10 of those for a while, just switching up pose every 2 minutes. So I did some like really wild stuff. And then I just really wanted to try to do something super simple for the really long one, but I failed at that apparently, because like, my God, it was fucked up how much in pain I was from sitting there with my legs crossed for however long it ended up being cumulatively. It was like an hour and a half or so. Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, it's basically a lotus pose with no pillow. I mean,
Yeah.
That's
Pretty much. And I was on a chair, like, it was nice. But the other guy, because he was super confident, he struck a pose that was like the ultimately easy to keep pose. He sat back in his chair, spread his legs really wide, and just like kind of just went to sleep as far as I could tell. Like he just closed his eyes and was gone.
Gone,
You know,
yeah,
no
not
longer hanging out.
I am simply a subject for you.
Right.
Yeah.
It is very weird because it's like you're being objectified, and that
Yeah.
you're like that is the definition of what you're doing, and everyone's looking at you, but you're not really like what they're focusing on. Like they
Yeah.
don't care about who you are, what you're doing. Like
They're so focused on each mark that they're making,
right.
and that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. But well, good way to get some extra cash if you ever need a way to do it, and you're confident with your body. Then
Yeah.
get on that pedestal.
Get on that pedestal, put it up.
Yeah, I think I'll do it again. If they invite me back, I'll do it again.
That's
For sure.
interesting. I was thinking about doing that. I heard it was a pretty good amount, or pretty good, quick way to get some cash if you need it.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
just minimum wage per hour, but you put in 4 hours. You're really doing kind of nothing.
Yeah.
The main thing was boredom and being
Yeah.
sore, all that. Yeah.
It's not too bad. So what are you working on? What's new with you besides the shoebox?
Well, so I just finished the Cornucopia project, my long
Yeah.
feature-length film, and
Props on that, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I know
Yeah.
that was a long time in the making.
it was for sure really long time in the making. And I'm actually super. This is cliche as it gets, but I'm really surprised with how much people liked it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's gonna be my first feature film, and whatever. I'm not really planning on any success with it. I was just kind of gonna finish it for myself and then put it out there.
Yeah.
But like, and then I advertised it. I told people, hey, it's finished. Go check it out if you care. A ton of people did. Like,
Nice.
really, not really on the live streams, and that makes sense. Nobody
Like
really
the-
wants to go and watch something at a specific time, especially at the
Premiere,
time.
was it?
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
premiered it on RVTV
Yeah.
twice before it then premiered on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so that makes it 3 premieres, I guess, altogether. And nobody really watched as far as I know, nobody watched the RVTV ones except for my uncle, who like called me and was like, "Yo, I just watched it. It was cool."
Yeah.
And then
That's dope. Is
yeah.
he local in town?
no, he's they live in Georgia. My mom is actually visiting them right now.
Georgia, like
yeah,
southeast?
Atlanta.
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Wow.
Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I was born, actually.
Word.
Yep.
Shout out to the South. I'm from Alabama.
That's
so-
right. Yeah.
yeah.
So we're both initially Southern babies. Although I was very, very quickly moved to the Northwest, so
Okay.
I have to consider myself a product of Oregon, in that regard.
That's what made you.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
But what was I talking about?
Your uncle, RVTV,
That's right.
premiere. Yeah.
And then nobody watched the YouTube premiere, which was funny because I was gonna sit like. I don't know if you know, but YouTube has like a premiere system where
Yeah.
you're able to premiere things and they play like live streams and people can live chat. So I was
I
kind of
was
looking.
there for that. I commented a little bit.
Oh, that's right. You
Yeah.
actually were in there.
I'm hurt, bro.
Yeah, that's right. But overall, not very
Yeah,
many people.
yeah.
So that's why I like abandoned it. I was like, oh, no one's watching. That's fine. So I left because nobody was asking any questions. But then, like right after that, within the first day or two, like everyone watched it.
Yeah.
It just really, it got picked up. I was really like surprised and stoked about that.
Awesome.
So that's what happened there. And then I immediately jumped into this new movie, essentially a sequel. It's about the Alvord Desert. It's the same premise. Lewis Bankson and I headed out into eastern Oregon. This time,
You already shot it?
Yeah, so it's all shot.
Oh, nice.
So we headed out to southeastern Oregon to this place called the Alvord Desert, which is like can't really be described as anything other than a massive expanse of nothingness, like in the
Okay.
most pure sense. It's a flat playa with about the same texture as pita bread that just goes on
Okay.
for like 12 miles in every direction.
Wow.
And so we go there and we establish camp on like the far end of the desert, and then we hike. Then we hike from our like campsite across the entire thing to this hot spring, and then we hike back.
Nice.
So it's just sort of a weird little adventure to kind of talk about some of the interesting shit going on in the Alvord Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what all's out there? Like just the hot springs? Like did you encounter other people? Or?
There were other people. It was a wide range of other people. It's kind of, so like, they call it overland adventuring now, which is basically people who get like nice trucks or vans or vehicles that are good for off-roading, but that you can also live out of, and you just kind of roam around the back country. And the Alvord Desert is big for that because there's a lot of places to get in and out of it that aren't like main roads. You're just going off into the deserty boonies where there's nothing of civilization. And so you get a lot of like hippie, hobo traveler kind of people, but then it does sort of have like the vacation aspect to it near the hot springs. So there you get more of like the typical family camping crowd.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, crazy story about the Alvord Hot Spring. Everything there is super expensive, or it isn't so much that it's expensive, it's just that everything costs money, because it used
Yeah.
to be a public hot spring, just water coming out of the ground. You were free to go swim there. And then the BLM, I guess to make money or something, they sold it to this family that now operates it. And they're perfectly nice people, but they really, really are trying to get their money's worth of
Yeah.
everything. Like,
Yeah.
everything. So if you don't know, BLM land is free to camp on
Yeah.
anywhere you want, and you can stay there for like 7 days before you have to move at least 500 feet.
Yeah.
So
okay, that's
it's
not too bad.
really relaxed in terms of how long you're allowed to go camping. The entirety of the Alvord Desert is owned by the BLM, except for the hot spring and maybe a few other smaller properties that are around there. But like 99.9% of it is all just free, open BLM land. The Alvord people, the Alvord hot spring people, are trying to charge people for camping on their little plot of land. They're like, hey, we offer camping. Do you want to
Like,
come camp? But it's just more flat desert. Like, it isn't any different than anything else.
No supplied water or like power. Or...
I guess that might be the advantage, is like there's sort of a store right there. You know, you have access to some basic amenities, but you could just go camping in the desert, come back and buy some stuff at the store, and then go back out into the desert where it's free, which is what we did.
Yeah, definitely.
Or pay for the hot spring or whatever. But what was really startling is that they had an access road out onto the flat. So like, the desert is kind of a bowl shape. Everything is sloping down until you get to this dry lake bed that is just the perfectly flat 12 by 7 expanse of,
Mile.
yeah, 12 by 7 mile expanse of nothing. And because it's so empty, like, they just let people take cars on it. You can land a plane there. Like,
Yeah.
you're allowed to do anything you want.
Yeah. That's so sick.
And so there's a bunch of little access roads, but the Alvord Hot Spring people own one of those roads, and on their like prices list of the things that they have for sale, one of them is just desert access using our road, $5 per vehicle per day. And it's like, that isn't an insane cost. It's just like
The fact that
the
that's even
the ballsiness of thinking that that's something they'll be able to make money off of in that place. Like, they by far do not have the only road. And it's also just kind of a road. Like, I don't even know how they enforce getting their money out of that. But anyway.
I mean, yeah, what if you just drive perpendicular over the road? I mean,
Right. It's a very weird situation with them. And I don't know. Maybe it's successful. Maybe they make a lot of money doing that. And, like, you have to subsist somehow out there. There's not a whole lot of, like, industry or agriculture
yeah.
or urbanization. There's actually no economy of any kind if you really think about
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna
Like, there
say, I
can't be.
How many like residents are there? Like, there can't be. Yeah, all has to be based on tourism. It can't just be localized.
I'd bet that altogether that area of Oregon, like that corner of it, probably has less than 1,000 people in it. Just that little region has just nothing. Most of the towns are like ancient, historical kinds of places.
Mhm.
Like, they
And so
got
you
moved out of a long
You
time
have to
ago.
outsource like groceries and shit. You have to like go somewhere.
We didn't see any grocery stores near there, so I'd bet they probably the nearest urban location is somewhere in Nevada to them. And there was like, actually right over the border into Nevada, there was this like a little store that you could get some basic supplies from. Like, you know, you wouldn't starve to death,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't be able to get any of your sort of main groceries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a strange situation.
And so that's in the southeast of Oregon.
Yeah, Southeast Oregon. You actually do have to go through Nevada to get to it though, because
Okay, you
it's
have to kinda
so
dip down and up.
unserviced. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
It's pretty wild. For sure my favorite place in Oregon, partially because it's obscure and partially just because it's so freaking beautiful and everything.
Yeah, I've heard like the east side, north and south are just kind of like barren, like farm country or flyover. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot there.
Well, so that's like what you think, but there is
Yeah.
like a lot there. Quite a bit actually. So like the whole Wallowa Mountains is up in nearly Idaho, northeastern Oregon.
And
That was
where
That
you
was
did
the last documentary. Yeah.
cornucopia. Yeah. Okay.
That whole thing is up sort of in that corner, and it's really densely populated and lots of cool little cabins and things to do and stuff to see, but again, it's kind of not very well known about. Like, it's not the popular part of Oregon, because people think of Oregon and they're like, oh, the I-5 corridor,
Yeah.
because the I-5 corridor just has most of the stuff on it. It makes sense. But man, there's some really cool stuff to just go see out east. And so that's pretty much all of Eastern Oregon is my favorite half of Oregon. I wouldn't want to live there. I like to keep it as like the thing to go and travel to that is nearby.
It's a sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about you? What's your like major pressing project right now? You were sort of mentioning about sort of all of the stuff that you're doing, but
Yeah.
what is your current like? What's your magnum opus at the moment?
Yeah,
That's a term I like.
My magnum opus. I was never too good with Latin. Is that magnum meaning largest?
No, I
Dominant?
don't actually know exactly what it means, but
Opus meaning focus?
it
maybe?
primarily refers to just like whatever work you're doing right now that's your like latest and greatest, and when it's done it'll be most representative of what you're able to do. Like I'd consider the cornucopia project my latest magnum opus. Like that is all of the stuff, like all of the skills that I have slammed together, however good or bad those skills might be. That is like the best that I can do,
Okay.
all pretty much present. And I try to make every project like that, but yeah. What's that for you?
That's interesting. Right now I'm working on that guy Jaya Ray's. I'm shooting a music video for his album called Gone.
Gotcha.
A track called Gone, and he's really helping me to push my boundaries as far as effects and thinking about linear editing, as far as visual, like having what he calls a through line. That might just be what it's called, but he brought it up to me, and like having it make sense as it moves from shot to shot, having the sequence make sense.
Totally.
And so I'm really kind of focusing on that, and then working with some weird new effects that I haven't really dealt with before, just inside of the Adobe program. And so it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. But I also just shot a concert with the Haiku d'Etat crew. They are like underground legends of hip hop in LA, and
Right
they
on.
came up and they like rocked the house in iPub and in Grants Pass at Sound Lounge. And so right now I'm going to be trying to work with some of those effects and trying to make those highlights of those two shows something really cool that they can promote the last like couple of shows that they're going on tour with, that they can be proud of and be like, yo, rep this. And then that's just unbelievable exposure and opportunity for me to be with those guys and work with them. And
Totally.
Lock Jester that was up there.
Yeah. So who are they
Phenomenal.
and what do they do?
They're hip hop artists.
Mhm.
They were really big in LA around maybe late '90s, early 2000s, and then they since then they put out a couple stuff. But it's Mike and Nine, Abstract Rude, and AC Alone. And AC Alone wasn't able to be there, so it was just Abstract Rude, Ab Rude, and Mike and Nine.
Gotcha.
And they unbelievably like real, down to earth people. And they're all about the meditation and the path and the Tao and like focusing on that kind of stuff. So
Right.
it's like conscious hip hop, and that's why I really vibe with that.
Is that the stuff that we first listened to when we were going to whatever that shoot was at the high school?
That was actually a band called The Roomy Depth,
Okay.
and I connected with them early on. I think last summer, and from them they've been throwing a lot of shows, and I've connected with a bunch of other people. That's how I know Jaya, the Haiku d'Etat, and got to work with all them because they were there and do all those shows.
Right on.
And he's all about sun yoga. James, he's all about the meditation and the path and really like self-discipline. And I kind of looked at him as like my guru or my guide in that kind of way. Like I really had to watch every step that I'm taking to make sure that I can keep up with the moves that he's making with all the people he's making moves with.
Totally.
So that kind of keeps me on my toes and is really helping me to level up. And with that, I've seen a good bit of growth within myself, but then, there's always a whole lot more in the next step. So right now I'm just trying to get as much video as I can
Right.
and put it out, and hopefully we can see growth over time through that. I think right now it's where I'm at, and that's just what I'm doing.
Sweet.
But I would love, there are definitely some things that I would like to work on and improve on that I see within my work that I'm like, I wasn't as good as Keegan shit, It's like the documentary was like on point, It's like I'm trying to, so it's like having influential people that inspire me, like you, like James, like all these people that are creating things that are close to their heart. It's like, okay, I've been struggling for like trying to find my voice and my message, so I kind of tend to latch on to people that have something, and then I try to help them out. And so that's kind of where I find myself here. That's where I was at a couple years ago, and things just didn't work out for whatever reason, and then I found myself in Oregon. Oregon was never on my map, like it was never on my radar. And so here I am doing this podcast, shooting podcasts and shooting shows, and on top of that, staying in school and staying on top of myself to make sure that gets done.
Right.
And this is my first year well, this is my second year. This is the farthest I've made it being able to juggle those things. So
It's hard to juggle all that stuff. I've
Yeah.
been talking a lot with Sydney about like becoming overwhelmed because there's all of these cool opportunities and projects that have started to come up in this last year,
yeah,
and I can tell that there are a lot more of them around the corner.
yeah,
But then there's so much like other stuff that just sort of is like it feels like it's from the past almost, like there's more school to do. I have another year and a term or something like that.
yeah,
And there's just it's so hard to balance like all these opportunities that you get with all of these things that are the like product of other opportunities that you had in the past,
yeah,
essentially, because that's what school is. It's like a cool opportunity. But lately, man, it has not been feeling like that, because it's like I want to go and do just some cool stuff. I don't want to get too off track, but yeah. So I guess I know exactly what you're.
It's almost kind of like once, for me, I don't know how it is with you, but for me, I'm like, okay, I reached a place, I'm managing shit. Like, I'm sorry about cursing. I don't know how you.
Oh, we can't. Yeah, it's very loose.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my bad. I'll try to keep it down anyways. But yeah, it's like, okay, I'm on top of it. I'm handling it 1 week, and then it's like something will happen, get overbooked, or forget about a project, an assignment, and it's like, oh my god. Then all of a sudden, the universe is like, oh really? You're good? Well, we'll handle that then. And it's like, oh my god. Okay, so then it's like, there's that other step, have to grow, and then organize, and it just seems like some of the basic like necessity of just being a human and like an adult, like knowing not just your day-to-day, but like your week-to-week and your month-to-month, and kind of getting at longer waveform of vision to where you can operate in a day-to-day while focusing on the long-term.
Totally. Yeah, I've started every day, like, I have like a basic day by day, day per page kind of planner. And so every day is a list now of just what I'm doing, everything that I'm going to do. And it's usually like 5 things. I'll try to contain it to the number of lines that I have in that box for that day. Because, if it's any more than that 5, it tends to feel overwhelming. If it's any less, then it's really like not enough, and I feel like I have wasted the day or something like that.
Yeah.
I have the worst dichotomy between really wanting free time when I'm busy, and then when I'm not busy at all, just being like, damn, if only I had something interesting to go do right now. And it's the most torturous feeling.
Yeah, and that's kind of that balance, that's that fine line of kind of getting to that point where taking the ups and downs, like having those free days and being able to enjoy it, but then also enjoying the work that you're doing and the process behind that. Doing the podcast that I'm doing with these older cats, they're like 35, 42, and like 37. And they're all artists. We did a couple with like an 80-year-old and a 65-year-old too, and they were all preaching the same thing of art isn't the final product. It's not like when we're done shooting this podcast and it goes up, that's not it. It's one, the process of all of those episodes, and then it's also the process of editing it, setting it up, shooting it, having these conversations.
Yeah,
is the actual art form, not the final project, not the actual waveform file, So
right.
Or the art piece, the painting. It's the process of creating it. And so for me, I find myself happiest when I do have, like when I am overbooked and like I'm exhausted and like I've been going nonstop. I find myself in these moments of downtime like really happy that I have done something, but then it's always like on to the next. It's like, okay, well I shot it and I feel good about shooting it, well now I need to edit it. I need to enjoy that process of editing it, and then enjoy the process of writing a caption for it and tagging it and all that, so it's pretty interesting looking at that. I've always
considered myself a very like finished product oriented person when it comes to the motivation to actually in the moment doing a thing. It's like, oh, it's gonna be so dope when it's finished, but that's always the case at the end when you're done with something is like that satisfaction does not last very long. Like, it took me months to finish the cornucopia project, and so it seemed like I should have at least a month where I'm just chill and I don't feel this like incessant need to be working on like that type of content. But nope, like I had to get right back into it, even though I'd say that a lot of the process of making stuff like that isn't actually all that enjoyable to me. I don't enjoy sitting there for hours trying to get my voiceovers to sound good. I really don't like going through and making sure my audio isn't like crappy when it cuts from one shot to the next. Like there are some insanely tedious parts about doing that are not just the glamorous like storytelling, love of my life kind of things. And so I always feel that like, oh, I just cannot wait to be done with this, even though that never means anything.
So why do you do it? Why do you put in those hours?
Because I really do like having the the thing in the end, I guess. There is that, but so
Okay.
I like having the product. Like I like having the cornucopia project as a thing that exists, and now it's something that I can reference back to that I did. It's a record of a cool adventure that I went on, and it's also just a good timestamp of the kind of filmmaking I'm capable of doing. And so I do like having that, but I want there to be a catalog of it, because what has caused me to sort of accelerate the rate at which I do things is that now having, you know, been a person who was a middle schooler and then a high schooler and then a college student, all through that time I was like making little things, and through a lot of it I wasn't making very much very often, but eventually it starts to stack up, like the number of stupid sketches that I made in high school. And there's a YouTube channel out there with like 40 videos in it that just shows this nice incremental improvement in my ability to make weird little sketches, and that's like the most satisfying thing ever to me, is being able to look back at like literal improvement at doing a specific thing. I don't even necessarily think it actually matters what I'm doing. I just kind of fell into doing this naturally, because my parents are both entertainment people. My mom worked in radio, so I was very easily able to get a job doing that sort of stuff, being around those sorts of people, and so it just sucked me up. Like, I would say probably the reason I'm doing it is just because like something else didn't get me first. Yeah, that's probably mostly true, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
If something else did suck you up, what would that have been?
It could. Well, I almost got sucked up by like science and physics stuff, but then I never found that I was actually that good or interested in doing the hard math.
That's same.
And so, honestly, it probably would be something entertainment oriented, or at very least like communications-y, like not grounded out like super hard math logic stuff. Even if I do find that stuff kind of interesting, just because I don't think I have the mental setup to like handle doing equations all day long. But I do enjoy communicating ideas and talking about them and having all of that. And so for a long time I was like a theater kid, you know, in high school. But you know, later that just got transitioned into more technological forms of entertainment, and then it was radio for a while. Can't actually remember what caused me to get into making documentaries about my local environment, but now I consider that like totally my passion. I'm excited about doing it. You know, so I got sucked into it basically. More in that sense. It found me. Cliches. Gosh.
Hey, but there's a reason why the cliches exist. And I think that's true. There's some nod to the laws of the universe. You know, it's
there is that things are just kind of happening the way that they happen. We follow those typical patterns of like, hey, you know, I was just kind of a random kid given a random thing to do, and that's what I'm doing now.
Are you familiar with I think his name's Chris Hartman?
Chris Hartman. I don't think so.
He's
enlighten me.
He's longtime CBS package producer. He does these things what's called Everybody Has a Story. So like maybe once a week he just has like one camera guy that goes out with him, but he'll just throw a dartboard behind his back on a map. He'll go to that city wherever it lands on, pick up a phone book, flip through it, bam, first person he puts his finger on, he calls them. First person that agrees to talk, he'll go up, and no script, no clue what they're talking about, but somehow manages to pull like a super heartfelt story from it. And it's pretty interesting the way that he talks to people and can kind of really dig and see where their soft spots are, like, and then the fact that he's able to bring that up within them and kind of talk about that to a stranger, a complete stranger, with the camera right in front of their face,
right?
You know, and so there's a lot to learn from that. You know,
totally.
The way that he does that, and then even if you're focused on the camera work, the cameraman is doing his own thing, getting B-roll, knowing where it's just the teamwork between those two is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's what I'm really excited for. Is once I'm sort of out of school, I'll be able to really tackle some project like that. Like I do want a consistent long-term project, something that won't be finished, maybe ever. Because everything I do is always that kind of a project. It's going to have an end where I'm going to produce something and that's it. Like I'm never going back to the Wallowa Mountains to make, you know, presumably at least, never going back to make another documentary. No follow-ups.
Well,
like
I mean, Wild Bill has his own documentary. That could be a whole other thing.
his
The
life
Wild
just
Bill
alone
Chronicles.
probably could be a movie. I was very blessed to get what I
Yeah.
got out of him
That's
while
amazing.
he was still around, because that was a really cool encounter.
And that
And
sense of humor he's got too.
he's a
That's
hilarious guy. Yeah, really, really interesting person to have
Yeah.
met. And that was another thing that just very much came together randomly. We didn't plan that. We just found this restaurant, and they mentioned like, yeah, he knows a lot about like the history of the town. He's like the oldest person around here.
He's still
It
around?
turns
What?
out like, yeah, he was still around, and
Should still be. I
look him
guess,
up,
but-
and he died, unfortunately.
did?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I
Didn't
mentioned
know
that in the documentary right at the end, or
I
right
missed that.
after that interview. He did
Okay.
actually pass away on November 24th, I want to say.
How many months passed before he passed?
It
since you
was
talked to him?
1 month. It was like 35 days.
Wow.
He was definitely
That's a
very
blessing.
sickly when we met him.
Yeah.
You know, really old guy. You could just tell. But man, he was fun to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
And really just willing to do that, which I thought was super dope.
The fact that he was feeling all right for it.
Yeah, like he didn't have to at all, because he was so. That's what the lady told us, was like, well, I can go ask him for you, but he's been like really sick and might not be up for it. But I guess he just was, like, that day. He was totally game to
That's so
hang out
awesome.
and have a conversation. But that's a situation where I have a lot of retrospective regrets about things that I wish I had done differently. Like, I wish I had just gotten the balls to be like, hey, sir, can I put a lav mic on you? Because I didn't. I was like, I don't want to be intrusive in his, like, space, you know, because where he was sitting, he kind of had his whole, like, world around him. And I was like, I don't want to invade that. But I should have. I should have just been like, is it all right if I put a lav mic on you? He would have said yes. It would have been fine. And I would have gotten better audio because of it. Wish I had set up the camera in a different place. There's so many things I wish I had asked him instead of the things that I did. But
It looked like it was a different camera that you used as well.
it was my normal camera. I shot that whole thing on on my typical regular DSLR that I use every day. And everything came out well. It's just not good in low light.
Oh, is that what it was? The
yeah.
ISO was up a little
Low
bit.
light and harsh background noise going on. And I just, didn't think to put the mic on him until it was too late. And then I was too embarrassed to be
Yeah.
like, hey,
Can
actually,
we go back and redo
right,
that
like
whole
we
thing?
need this mic on you.
But see, that's one of the things you live and learn.
Right,
So,
the next one is gonna go so much better because I like have that constant nagging thing of like, oh, you have to do that better
it
the
has
next
to be
time.
that standard
Right.
every single time. Yeah.
And I think doing it that way almost gives me some more credibility when interviewing somebody, because like the way that went down, to an outsider, it really was just these two random guys showed up in his house with a very simple camera and like grabbed his story real quick and ran out. If we had made more of a thing of it, you know, like, okay, well, we'll be there with some equipment, then maybe
Would have been a little bit.
Right.
Came off, maybe appeared more professional.
totally. And those are just things that, you know, post-college will be a lot easier to kind of pull together because I'll have a lot more time to plan and a lot more time to get the resources together. It'll be easier to plan with other people.
Yeah.
You know, just stuff. It's a constant strive to improve everything. So, yeah.
I think that's all everything's doing. It's all
Mhm.
trying to improve and be better. That's what evolution, adaptation is. You know, it's
Totally.
like, yeah, I think if we're not doing that, if we're stagnant, that's when, for me, that's when that shadow just envelops me, and I'm just like, it's just hard to shine through that and break out.
Totally. The really unhappy people are the ones who just aren't, you know, doing anything all that new. They get stuck in whatever they're doing, complacent, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to avoid that. Like, I see the inevitability of having to get some job that's going to require a lot of work, like 40 hours a week. But I like the idea of that because it's like, hey, that's a lot of money. And then you don't typically have homework from a job. So
once you clock
40
out.
out, like adding it all together, I'm actually going to have a lot more free time, or at least useful free time.
And scheduled. You'll know
Scheduled,
where it's
yeah.
at.
I'll be like, okay, I know right now I'm going to have this free time so I can plan weeks out instead of like the week. That's
Yeah.
all I ever know is what's happening this week.
Yeah.
Because through, my classes are pretty regular, but my RVTV schedule is constantly changing around due to
Yeah.
other people's class stuff happening. It's just, yeah, the college environment is
Hectic, man.
very hectic.
Yeah.
Too crazy.
Thanks for showing me this spot, dude.
Yeah, I
This
guess
is-
that's the thing. We should probably mention where we are because this is an audio-only program.
Unfortunately, I wish you guys could see it. This is
Yeah, I'll put
Yeah.
some pictures into the video if you're watching on the video in this moment. But we're in this cool, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's a park. That's how I'd put it. it's a park, but it isn't one of the official Ashland parks. It's just this kind of amalgamation of people's yards that's down in this little miniature valley with some nice trees, and you can hear in the background for sure there's a stream running through. It's just gorgeous.
It's like Little Lithia, you know. It's much less populated, but has a lot of the greenery, the vibrance, and then that sound of just that river that I don't know. But
Yeah. This is what Ashland is really good for, I'm finding, is places like this, little spots.
little pockets of just nature.
Totally. You can just go walking around, and little pockets like this are almost as common as churches are in Ashland.
Seriously, yeah.
Have you noticed how many churches there are in this town?
Definitely more populated than other places in Ashland or in Oregon. I've seen at least in this small town, like there's 3 or 4 on 99.
It's remarkable. I can't remember the exact figure, but there's something like 65 churches in Ashland, Christian denomination churches.
Really?
Yeah. And then of course a sprinkling of non-Christian as well. But
Wow, I had no idea.
yeah, when you're driving around or walking around next time, just like pay attention and you'll find a church almost any street you're on. There's a little thing. But it's mysterious to me because I'm like, how could they, like, all of these churches be getting enough people to go to them? Like,
seriously, there's only 20,000 people here.
Right, and so 20,000 divided by 65 is whatever, but you know that not that many people are devout Christians in
Yeah, I
this
was gonna
town.
say.
Like, it's mostly,
Then the ones that are Christian that don't attend.
right, like I'm a raised Catholic, as they say.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I don't go to church. I don't think I know anybody who regularly does. Sometimes Sydney checks it out, but never regularly. So I just don't know how they, like, keep functioning.
And then there's a couple ashrams as well.
Yeah, and there's like, you know, there being 65 or whatever Christian churches doesn't take away from the diversity of the place at all, because like, holy crap, there's actually quite a few other spiritual institutions around here as well. It's just, there's a lot of that going on. It's
definitely one of the more spiritual places without, I'll say openly spiritual without connotating any specific religion.
Yeah.
A lot of people can talk and are open about their spirituality, but then kind of tend to not pin it, either leave it open for that person's interpretation or are completely open, knowing that it might be different, or completely open with that other person's.
Yeah, it's always been here that I've had some of the most interesting conversations about spirituality, religion, philosophy, and theology, because people are so just kind of chill about it. Like, nobody is super freaked out by the idea of religion around here, I guess. And even the ones who are very, like, agnostic or completely atheist, secular, like, everyone is really just level-headed about that topic, which is rare. In some places you just cannot find that at all.
Seriously.
You can't find anybody who's willing to have just a normal conversation about what their spirituality is and then react to yours with a sort of an equal level of respect. Yeah. Like, do you ever hang out at the Jackson Wellspring?
I've gone a couple times. I just don't get it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like, I don't get the whole, well, one, like, the whole steaming sauna situation.
Gotcha.
I'm not huge on that. It feels like I'm drowning.
Oh,
and then on
yeah.
top of that, being naked with other naked people. That's fine. It's fine. I've done it, and it's chill, but I just don't get it. Like, I'm from Alabama.
Oh, so
Very conservative, very, like, you do that in the shower and, like, in your bed, you know, or, like, in your bedroom. So it's just not one of those things that I'm really familiar with. So I don't necessarily get it.
Yeah.
I guess.
I would agree with you there. I don't really get it either, but I find I enjoy it quite a bit. And so I'm always hanging out there. And that's a good spot to have some of those sorts of conversations. People are really charged up to talk about religion stuff in that place, because of course the Wellspring tries very hard to make itself a spiritual atmosphere.
It's got the fairy rings and
yeah, they've got a whole lot. It's a whole commune, actually. It's one of the last, I guess it's one of the last, like, surviving hippie communes from back in, like, the day when hippie communes were really popping.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because it's still all, like, communed up, like that whole area of property.
And that back area mainly, right? Once you get away from the parking lot, kind of, it's...
Yeah, it's like it goes back into the forest, and it's kind of between whatever highway that is.
I think 99?
99 and then rammed up against the hill, going kind of up into the railroad tracks.
Yeah,
there's just
between Talon and Ashland, kind of.
Yeah, all around there's tiny houses and trailers and RVs and microbuses, minivans, and hippies galore.
Yeah.
Just walking around doing it how they've always been doing it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There's
You know?
I know there's a couple other ones up behind Tolman Creek.
Yeah.
Might not want to get too specific, but that are just completely fenced in that you can tell have residences in there that looks like they're just kind of just chilling, doing their thing, like self-sustaining for the most part, have their own little gardens, go to town for like gas or whatever.
I always talk with people that I would love someday to start such a thing, like a commune or whatever. And of course, people always jump to that, like, oh, it's going to end up being a cult. But it's like, as long as it's the Bhagwan always comes up right away. If you're just chill and don't like make yourself a god in your own commune, you're fine. Like, it's just going to be a chill place to hang out. And, like, the Jacksonville Spring is a good example of that. All the little like communes and hobo neighborhoods around here are good examples of that. But like, yeah, you can just make a self-sustaining community and like not be radically religious about some guru, and you'll be all right.
Right. Yeah, that was weird how out of hand that got for, especially like I feel like that kind of religion, that sect is like so peaceful.
It is, yeah.
It's weird that it escalated that way, but I guess, yeah, I don't mean to get into all that, but it had some mal parties in it.
Right. That was a very political kind of situation going on within it, which is rare for cults even. Usually whenever a cult gets really screwed up, it usually is just in the form of kind of classic abuse of power situations where like the guy who is really in charge just like ends up having not very good intentions after a while, and it gets screwy. But in that situation, it was his followers who like did all this weird stuff, and really what he's to blame for is just not watching it more closely. Like, he should have been more supervisional and like, he was just like, whatever happens here, it's okay, like, I don't care, and then went off and like got into a vow of silence or whatever.
Yeah, and then just let it happen.
Right, and it's like, okay, like, you can have a vow of silence, but maybe don't try and lead a commune while doing that. Like,
yeah,
those are things that don't go together. So that's what maybe where his blame lies. But then, yeah, his followers are just, or that group of his followers with Sheila and everything, got wild.
It really just kind of held a mirror up, I feel like, to that society that felt like they were so pure, and the ones that were doing the malpractice, I felt like might have had a superiority complex, felt like they were better. And then it just, the way that nature set up is it just really amplified that and really held a mirror up, hopefully, to those individuals that was like, okay, well, this is who we are, that's not what we stand for. Their virtue became a vice, and I'm kind of seeing that within the whole nation. Is like, we hold so strongly to these virtues that we feel like everyone should, and then we have a physical manifestation of that internal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a huge thing coming up in my life lately, watching sort of people in echo chambers, because I try very hard to not be in an echo chamber. I like ideas that challenge things that I already believe, even if I really know that they're not the kind of ideas that I'm going to end up subscribing to or being attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes like hearing ideas I disagree with just to kind of practice disagreeing with things, like figuring out why I disagree, yada yada. But there are some people who really don't like it when ideas that they don't agree with are presented or put onto a public platform. And of course that started with reasonable things, like, yeah, we don't want like actual Nazis to be going around and like putting out their propaganda. Like, that's something that we can all pretty much agree should probably be prevented.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we got so deep into that idea of like, let's prevent bad ideas from spreading, that now we're like afraid, we're threatened by ideas that just aren't even ours. We don't analyze if they're actually threatening in the first place, because a lot of ideas are just, they're disagreeable, but they're completely mundane. And I don't know. It seems a shame to me that you couldn't get into some strange conversations about those things anymore, as easily anyway, with a lot of people. Like, the last podcast that I did was with 2 Mormon missionaries.
Oh yeah.
And it was really cool. I ended up screwing up the audio, and their channel came in really quiet, but it's fine. It was legible. But the conversation was extremely interesting, even though I was like, and we said this, like, the conversation could be interesting because I wasn't threatened by their presence. I wasn't afraid that I was going to become a Mormon because we were talking about Mormonism.
Mm-hmm.
I was mostly just interested in like kind of prying into that worldview a little bit, seeing what it's all about, and then injecting some of my own ideas that I've thought of that maybe in their own worldview they haven't thought of, and seeing how those two things slam together. And it was really interesting. Like, everyone had a great time.
Yeah, it was a convergence of perspectives
Right.
in a little bit.
We both agreed that we didn't agree with each other, but that we were having a blast just talking about that sort of stuff. Once we got past that initial awkwardness of like, oh, is it okay if we like talk about this? Like, you know, I wanted to talk about psychedelics with them, and finally like got to it, and was nervous that they'd be very upset by that, but they were very, very open to talking about it.
Had they tried psychedelics?
They hadn't, but they had heard a surprisingly high amount about it, more than I had imagined they would have heard about it. They were still of the opinion that you shouldn't try them. But so what we talked about was like, I wanted to discuss whether they thought it was possible that like Joseph Smith's religious experience that he had when he was in the forest might have been the result of a psychedelic. And I clarified then, but I'm not saying that devalidates the religious experience, because what I believe is that psychedelics are like a window into a more spiritual way of looking at things. You take them and you're able to like see layers of the world that you're not normally able to see. And the one of them really liked that idea. He was like, that is very cool, and thought it was super neat that was my understanding on it. Ultimately decided for himself, just was thinking that Joseph Smith probably just was literally talked to by God, but he didn't inherently disagree with the idea that it might have been because of psychedelics, if you accept that those psychedelics are the tool in which people have those experiences.
Fair enough. I mean, that when worded like that, well thought out statements.
Right.
It's like, it's like follows that logical A, B, and C. If that, I can totally see that, and that kind of eliminates the subjectivity, any sort of inference that might be coming, that might be felt by you, completely eliminates that and just says, an objective truth, relatively.
And they had an interesting point that came first, actually, but it was that in the ancient past, well, let me rephrase that. So in the time of like Joseph Smith, at that moment, people didn't.
Like 1790?
This was in the 1800s, I believe. Okay. It's like recent history.
Yeah.
That religion is not very old, which is why I think people still think it's weird. Is because it isn't old enough for people to accept it as being normal. Yeah. But it's not like any weirder than any other religion on a objective level. Like they do weird stuff. Catholics do weird stuff. Hindus do weird stuff. Everybody does weird stuff. That's, hey, welcome to the human race.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a weird tradition and a weird ritual that they're up to. But they were talking about how religious experiences of that level were something that don't happen in the modern day. They were something that happened in the ancient past, or at least that's what people in the 1800s believed. They're like,
and that's kind of the understanding with Christianity as well. Like God used to talk in the Old Testament directly to people
all the time,
not anymore now.
Right,
or even show himself.
He stopped doing it for some reason.
Yeah.
But there's also, of course, historically, a point at which people were using psychedelics all the time. They were an open and accepted part of their societies and cultures and religions.
That's like a scientific...
And then, it's like a historical thing. We know it for sure that certain cultures in the ancient past were using them all the time as like the center of their religions, because they felt what we feel now when we do them. Like, whoa, I just saw something that's beyond the scope of this world. I think it was God, and that's how they come to understand it. And so for many religions, that was just a normal thing. They would do that all the time. Like, every week or whatever, you'd do some psychedelics and see a God. But it, of course, it's fallen out of favor in a lot of the world these days. People are not, at least for a long time, they don't want to do psychedelics because it's related to drugs and all that stuff. And so you'd get sort of a sense that, religious experiences are a thing that definitely happened way more often in the ancient past. If you look at it in terms of metrics and volumes of people who would actually be having access to the things that give you those sorts of experiences, there'd be a lot more reports of crazy stuff like that happening in the past, where a prophet emerges having seen God and, hey, he's right about something, than in, more contemporary times. I think that's like super interesting.
Well, did you show those Mormons that I think Vice or somebody did a video of like Mormons taking LSD?
Oh, really?
It was like a group of 3 Mormons, and they like had them pop a tab of acid and then listen to like random like EDM music, and then like draw a picture and like talk about God. And they were just like hair. They were like, I'm not in this body. Like, I'm just controlling this thing. And they were just like had all these realizations, and it was so cool to kind of. One of them asked like, "Why are we doing this? Like, is this even worth it?" They're like, "What, the LSD?" He goes, "No, like, why are we Mormons? Like, what are we doing? Like, this is just what our parents said." And they just like were going through that whole process, and it was like really cool to see how that can open up the perception of different rules that are ingrained since birth. Like
Definitely.
there was a TED talk on psilocybin. I don't know how much time we have left.
As much as we want.
Okay. There's a TED talk on psilocybin and how it operates or kind of manipulates the way that the brain functions.
Right.
And there's this thing called the default mode network. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's basically the that was a neighbor.
Yeah, I think one of the people who cares for this park up there.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. And they were, psilocybin, default mode network. That's kind of the part of the brain that is predicting situations in the future and recalling past situations. It's that what do I have to do, remembrance situation. And that's kind of where we operate most on a day-to-day basis. That's where most of our blood flow goes, and that's where most of the generation of thoughts come from. With psilocybin, a dose of psilocybin, I think it was a relatively small dose even, and meditation also does this as well, is it prevents or cuts off some of the flow of oxygen to that default mode network, meaning that the neurons on either side of the brain it basically aligns that main middle divide, the DMN, and also the demon. It's the demon within us. So when you take psilocybin or meditate, it creates new neural pathways that connect, and it forces you to think and see things differently because your brain is talking to itself in a different way, taking new pathways.
Totally.
And so that's kind of the idea that when you do something like that, it either allows you to see more like visible light, like our spectrum that we can see is tiny compared to the amount of light that's actually out there.
Yeah.
And so my thought is, well, evolution, hopefully our eyes, maybe we could develop a way to see x-rays, infrared, all of that at the same time to where we can just walk and see like
everything.
Yeah, but anyways, a long tangential train, going back to that TED talk, is it forces you to think differently. So I think LSD does the same thing and makes you think in a different way. So having that ingrained mindset from a child, I think, is a really powerful way to manipulate people. And then if psilocybin psychedelics are the key to opening that gate to realizing that we are all gods and have infinite power potential, then no one person or one group can really manage anything.
Yeah.
Everybody's independent. So that goes to like taking those psychedelics off and go, no, we're going to think this way. We're going to get everybody to think this way. And
right.
So that kind of, I was trying to link it back to what you were talking about, but I forgot exactly what got me on that.
No, that's all super interesting. I think that's called neuroplasticity. That breaking away of the sort of thing. And I've actually noticed that in myself more with having microdosed versus like a full doses over the period of time I've been microdosing. Because I've been microdosing now for like 3 months, and in that I haven't done any like major mushroom trips. Just like once or twice a week, I'm taking a sliver of a mushroom, like less than a 0.1 of a gram, like very small. And I notice all kinds of funny things on days that I do it. Like there will be usually I'm very good about like before I leave the house I grab my keys, my phone, my Leatherman, and my wallet, and I'm just like in the pockets. I forget to do that when I've been on my everyday carry. I forget to do that when I do a microdose because I think it's because the neuroplasticity is there. Those neurons that normally tell me, oh, we got to grab all that stuff, they're not connecting anymore.
It's taking another route.
But then if I consciously remember it and I do it again, it like strengthens that habit because now it's formed that bridge yet another time. And then it does that with all kinds of other things. And I've noticed in recent times so much about the way that I think and perceive has changed. The level of self-awareness that I have because I'm not in old patterns anymore. Like I'm completely broken free of patterns that I had a year ago. Like things that I would do, it's like been erased if you can think of it like in that sense that whatever brain pattern I had going on before has just been totally rewired. And I think for a lot of people that sounds scary. Like that's like, oh, you're not yourself anymore. But it's like I feel so much more like myself. Like
there was
now
a fault,
versus to later.
quote unquote fault. Not that it was wrong, but there was something that was preventing you from feeling like you are yourself. And
right.
It's that constant building.
Totally.
Growth.
And there still is like it's a constant thing. Like it's always happening because there's still things about me that I'm like, oh, that isn't like me. That isn't my more idealized self. Because they talk about that. You have your real self and then you have your idealized self. The person that's inside your consciousness, the person you want to be, the person who you really are, and then the person who's who ends up being the result of what your bodily instincts are, and just sort of the natural realities of the way that the universe works. Like, you end up having to play a role that's a little different than your usual one, and you can actually get those to become rather far apart sometimes. And I think through like increased neuroplasticity and just sort of losing habits that are associated with like old identities I had to put on, you know, I can become more of a true self in that sense. And then if I
love the vernacular, man. That's awesome. Yeah.
if I do have to put on other identities, because of course we always have to do that when we're like doing our jobs or whatever, it's like that's sort of a different version of yourself. It's like a conscious version now. It's like I'm much more self-aware about all of my behavior when I'm doing it. It feels like calculated isn't sort of the right word, but it's like that. It's like everything is a lot more intentional that I'm doing. Yeah.
I had a conversation with my roommate. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go watch a movie. I probably shouldn't though. I need to save money, and you know, I need to do schoolwork." I'm like, "Okay." So where you find yourself now, and this is great. I was like talking to him, but it's also a mirror to me as well. But it's like where you find yourself now is you are aware of your different potentials within this moment based on some choices. And with that, which of those choices do you identify would align most with? And to me, lately, that's been like, well, what's going to make me the happiest at the end of that choice, or at the end of that choice? And so then it's becoming aware of those situations, those choices, and then being able to function your bodily, like your causal body that operates within time, to operate in a way that your, would you call it, your
true self,
idealized
self
wants to. I'm familiar with the Buddhic or theosophical language. You have your physical body, then you have like your mind, your ego, your lower manas, then you have your higher manas. So you have like your lower manas is like, I'm hungry, I want to fuck, I want food, like it's all like rooted in survival kind of and repopulation. Then you have the higher self that's like the adult kind of, in a way that like self-disciplines and tells you no. But that, and the higher self, I feel like, is cultivated by the lower self, and it's through the lower self disciplining itself and recognizing its patterns. Can you go up and into that higher, and then actually operate through those vehicles with the identity of that higher, truer self?
Right.
In a way.
It's just trying to act the way that person wants to act, I guess. You know, be that person in physicality as much as you can.
And a lot of it, you have to put thought into who you want to be and how you want to act. And I feel like a lot that's lost. It's not taught anymore. I don't know if it was ever taught, but like they don't teach you how to identify with yourself, cultivate what you like to do and be good at it on a day-to-day basis. They just tell you, here's the shit, and then you go do it.
Yeah. I think there's a big problem. I've been saying this lately a lot too. I think there's a big problem right now where a lot of people lacking a lot of respect for themselves. And it's actually like a big problem for everybody in our society. It's like, you ever had a crappy boss? It's because people don't respect themselves. We're like when we don't respect ourselves, we like let other people kind of control us and walk all over us. And then those people get used to being able to do that, and then they do it to everybody. Because I'm always saying, like, you know, if everybody just like quit when their boss was shitty, just had that respect and was like, I'm not doing this if you're going to be an asshole, then nobody would be able to afford being an asshole. And I think we're actually moving towards that. There's a lot more, at least in people like our age. Maybe this is a cliche that happens with every young generation, then they grow up and become apathetic. But I think that people are a lot more willing to be their true selves now than they've been. But that there's still a huge problem, and has been for like 100 years or more, a problem with people like lacking their self-respect, or thinking that their self-respect is worth trading for other things. And maybe sometimes it is. Like, if you're absolutely starving and, you know, you're not getting food and you just have to work, then like necessities are necessities. But when we kind of live in a nice society where things are relatively built up, and like the infrastructure that surrounds us is really good, and we generally don't have to worry about like actually dying because we're not, you know, doing what our landlord says.
Survival isn't nearly the problem it was a million years ago.
Like, we can be generally well assured that even if we really screw up our lives, then we're not going to die just because of that alone. Like, it takes a lot of factors for a person to like die because of failure now.
Right.
So I think people got to be a little bit more willing to fail or be kicked out of things or fired or whatever, or quit because it's not working out and move on to something else, even if there's going to be a little bit of struggle involved with that, because it's really worth doing work that's like meaningful to you and that you actually enjoy and that you
I was just noticing the trees. Sorry.
that you want to do, and not be treated like crap all the time, you know. And that's a nice thing, and I feel like I've been able to cultivate that in myself, that I won't like work for somebody who's just being awful. Like I had a job that I quit because everybody there was crap, but then hey, I've got this new job, RBTV. I'm so loyal to those people.
Yeah.
Like
And they see
you know,
that.
I grovel at their feet because they're so nice to me, so I give that back to them. So it's like if everybody's just respecting themselves, then it all circles around. Of course, it's hard to get everybody to do one thing, but
if you can get them to witness a situation, it's almost like people want to be shown that things are possible before they try shit. And so I think being the example and just operating in a way that lets other people see that.
Right.
Like, wow, that guy's really motivated. He does a lot of stuff for them. Well, why? It's like, well, they do that for him, and seeing that kind of recycled karma go into that little organization. Hopefully, for me, it pulls me in. I was like, I want to be a part of that as much as I can. Hopefully, it helps other people, and for me, that's my avenue as well. But hopefully, for other people, they can see that and go, wow, I want to do something like that in my own avenue. It's not quite video stuff, or it's whatever. Hopefully, but it's just lighting other people's fire, kind of like getting them inspired to do stuff.
That's what I really love about the public access TV station, is that it's all just that. It's all helping other people do their stuff. And yeah, exactly what you said, lighting their fires a little bit. Because all of them have these really cool projects that they want to be working on. And they just need that, they don't have much technical expertise, and so they need somebody who does. And it's like the most rewarding thing ever to go and be able to help them do that. And so, yeah, I'm like stoked to go to work every day. I work really hard all the time, or at least I try to. I put in my very best effort. But there have been jobs where that has not been the case, because, my God, the people are just like, did not inspire me to want to do anything for them. They were awful. If anything, I wanted to slow them down. Like, it was kind of an immoral business being run in a crappy way, and it was just like, blah.
Yeah, you just got to get out. That's good.
Right, and I just was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to. Yeah, I feel bad for a lot of the people who, like, just fall into doing something like that out of complacency. Like, some people want to be like a gardener or a landscaper. Like my buddy Steven, like that's what he likes to do. So he actually gets a lot out of it. And hey, it's all about what the crew is like. Like that gardening crew is awesome. Everyone's like stoked to be there. Oh, we got an airplane flying over. That's definitely showing up in the podcast.
Oh yeah. I hope you're happy.
I think we're loud enough. Also, there's a beehive up there.
Oh shit. Holy cow.
Yeah. But anyway, like, yeah, I just think people need to be able to see that they can always do something better, when they want to. If you're sitting there in your job and you're thinking, no, this is no fun at all, this is kind of shitty, and I'm not being treated well, then like, you should go find something else to do. Because hey, there probably is something better for you to be doing. And you can, it feels good to stick it to that boss who thinks he can control you, and show him you can't.
You can't
like,
control
and
me.
You can't do that to anyone.
You're the
really.
boss of my position, not me, bro.
Right, yeah. And so I can leave the position, not get paid anymore. I accept that,
that's fine.
obviously.
That's one of the terms.
Right.
I'll figure it out.
Totally. So if you're in any kind of position to get out of there, do.
Yeah, if you're not happy,
right.
Get yourself happy.
Yeah, you can live in a van. That's what I went and did right after that. I was like, all right, I have this much cash. I can live in a van. Because no one was giving me any sympathy at that time. That's also something, is that when you do something like that, you shouldn't expect sympathy. You shouldn't storm out of your job site and then go like, all right, where's the help or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, no. Have some.
It's you.
Have something like, now you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
That's a mirror real quick to the face.
Mm-hmm. That's how I figured out coming back to school was the thing to do.
Nice.
Okay, all right.
Nice.
I think that's a valuable thing to be working on at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm not just stuck doing labor stuff. And I'm privileged to be able to go to school, but if it wasn't school, then it would have been something else. Like I already had it in me to be like a freelance photographer if I'd wanted to. Had a nice portfolio of shoots. There opportunities abound always. And it's all about just how much you want to give yourself, basically. Yeah. I don't know what that was. That was mostly a ramble.
that was fine. That's perfect, dude. Yeah, definitely finding. I mean, you can do multiple assets. You can do documentaries. You can also contract photography.
Totally.
And all of that. Contract video.
Right, because that's my whole ambition now. Is I want to get a job that I can do every day and be happy doing, but one that doesn't absorb all of my time indiscriminately. Thinking, one where I can very distinctly be my own person outside of that role. Like my current job, fantastic for that. Like,
Yeah.
I go, I do my work, I do good at my work. They don't care who I am otherwise. I'm allowed to be whatever I want to be. So finding that kind of work is really important. Just the people who are able to respect that, like, you're actually your own organism. You're working on your own stuff, and like, you're aging on through this experience too. Like, shouldn't just be expected to give it everything all the time.
Right.
So So then the rest of the time I could go out and shoot some crazy documentaries and like really feel like I'm fulfilling passions.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, we've done an hour 5.
Okay.
Do we want to call it there, or do you think we have more to talk about?
I think we could go on for forever. I in the middle of writing a paper. I got to compile some more research.
Oh, yeah.
That's due on Monday.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So I'm kind of scrambling for some time, but
Cool.
if you don't mind, yeah.
Yeah, we can kill it now. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to the ShoeBox show. I hope that this sort of experimental setup here in the park works out. I hope the background noise isn't too jarring. I hope it wasn't too windy, all that stuff. I probably should have put a windsock on there, but I think we're fine. I was watching the waveform and it looked good.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey Tripp, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
It's been
Thanks
very
for having
awesome.
me. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think we'll do it again at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Sweet. All right, with that, I bid you farewell, and join me next time.